Welcome to another season of the ASTIT podcast, where we turn science into sense. In this season, we are introducing you, our listeners, to some of the Justice Community Opioid Innovation Network, or JCOIN, family. In episodes 1 and 10, you will hear from our funder, the National Institute on Drug Abuse. And in episodes 2 through 9, you will learn about cutting-edge and recent science published by some of the investigators working in the Learning to Advance Practice, or LEAP, program, a part of JCOIN. This is so exciting. So let's get started. I'm Danielle Rudes, your host, and this is ASTIT. Welcome. Today we are kicking off season 8 of the ASTIT podcast, and it is my honor and absolute privilege to be in conversation today with Dr. Tisha Wiley. Dr. Wiley is the Services Research Branch Chief and the Associate Director for Justice Systems at the National Institute on Drug Abuse, or NIDA. In this role, Dr. Wiley provides leadership across NIDA on justice-related issues. This includes leading NIDA's Justice Community Opioid Innovation Network, or JCOIN. During her time at NIDA and also at NIH, the National Institutes of Health, Dr. Wiley has developed and led dozens of initiatives across a wide range of topics, including implementation science, social media, methodology, and measurement. All right, Tisha, so we're going to dig right in. First, I'm going to ask you to tell me about JCOIN.
JCOIN is really about looking at the things that are driving people dying from overdoses and trying to address that. And in particular, JCOIN is really focused on the criminal legal system, people who are coming into contact through interactions with police. They're going to jail, they're coming out of prison. And we know that whenever people are touching the criminal justice system, particularly whenever they return home from a period of being in a jail or prison, that's one of the highest vulnerability periods for an overdose. And so JCOIN is really about the idea that every individual that's coming into contact with that system, if they've got a substance use disorder, they should be getting access to the things that work, that can address their addiction. In particular, with opioids, we know that medications for opioid use disorder are effective and can reduce the chances of people dying by 50%.
That is perfect. Thank you. I'm going to ask you to just dig a little bit deeper. Can you tell me a little bit more about how JCOIN helps move the field and us forward?
NIH is a research funding agency. So what we do is fund research. And so really at the heart of JCOIN is how do we generate research that can be really useful in day-to-day practice of what people are doing, what works, how do we get it into practice every day. And I think what's special about JCOIN is really how we've gone about generating that research and turning it into things that are useful for people every day. So the heart of JCOIN was really about building collaborations between people who are out there in the world, in the jails, in the prisons, in the community service organizations, treatment organizations, trying to help people, trying to save lives, and building that relationship with researchers so that the questions that we're asking from a research perspective are useful to daily practice.
So much great stuff here, but I'm guessing that there's even more. Can you maybe go into a little bit of detail about JCOIN's capacity building work?
So one of the things I think about a lot when I think about JCOIN is the responsibility that we have to the American taxpayer to make good use of taxpayer dollars when we're investing in research, and that we can hopefully find a way that it's not 10 years or 20 years before you see the payoff and the payback of those investments turning into better practice, better services, better experiences for people out there who are struggling for addiction. So I really think about, are we speeding science into solutions that are going to change people's lives in the near term? And so that's what I hope, as we've done all of this work and all the many activities that happen within JCOIN, that we're getting closer to that goal.
Okay, staying on topic, but shifting ever so slightly, JCOIN works with mostly experienced researchers, but also, and unbeknownst to some of our listeners, I think, also works with emerging scholars. And these folks are amazing. They have great ideas and are very innovative. And you want to get those ideas going. You want to get them moving forward. So this podcast, this season of the podcast in particular, is awesome because each episode, or 8 of the episodes 2 through 9, are filled with research that comes from the work of emerging scholars in the field. I'm hoping that you can help link this for our listeners. Tell me a little bit more about JCOIN's LEAP initiative.
The LEAP program is one of the most exciting parts of JCOIN because it's really the ideas that are going to change the world are not exclusive to people that have had 10 NIH R01 grants. They're everywhere, and they're from people that are taking inspiration from the things that they see every day in their work or a conversation that they've had, and they've got a great idea of a solution that they can bring. And so I think the LEAP program is creating pathways for whether those are people that want to become NIH investigators to help understand how to navigate that process, even if they didn't come up through a traditional NIH research-geared program. And I say that as someone who didn't come from that kind of program myself. I sort of bumbled my way here. And so I think one of the things that's always been important to me is creating more pathways for people with passion to find a way to make their mark on the world and opportunities for them to make their mark on the world. The other thing that I really love about the LEAP program, though, is it doesn't just focus on the researchers. It focuses on the people working out in the field every day, doing this work and trying to make a difference. And maybe they want to do their jobs better, or they want to understand how to make sure they're on the cutting edge, or they want to have a good understanding of what they're getting into when a researcher approaches them and asks them to sign up for a research project. And I think that by tackling both sides of this, building researchers who understand how to work well and be respectful partners with people in the field, as well as working with people out in the field and helping them understand what questions to ask, what to do, where to start, how to make sure that someone listens to them and their ideas, and they can really take full ownership of their role in a partnership with researchers. I think that's so important and so exciting, and I think one of the things that makes the LEAP program really special.
Pathways for people with passion. Oh, that is awesome. I love that statement. So LEAP is part of the JCOIN enterprise, and people come to this podcast to hear our translated research conversations, and this podcast is part of LEAP. On the podcast, we give them about 12 to 15 minutes each episode, but there's also more that JCOIN offers to individuals who are seeking information, and a lot of that is housed on something called the JTech website. Do you want to cover a couple of your favorite highlights where people seeking information, people like practitioners or students or researchers or just regular everyday people out in the world who are dealing with substance use disorders or opioid use disorders for themselves or their families or their communities, where would someone go on our website, www.jcoinctc.org/JTech. That's JTEC. Where would people go on our website to find something that they might think is useful?
We have a whole section on our website called JTech, which is the Training and Engagement Center. Mm-hmm. And so the JTech Center is where we collect a lot of different resources. Some of these are short courses. Some of them are longer courses. Some of them are YouTube clips or webinars, lots of different resources. It's always expanding. I think that's one of the things that's most exciting about JCOIN. We're always adding stuff to this. This podcast is one of the best examples. The other thing I always like to make a plug for is this technical assistance resource. This is something that is really facilitated by our partnership with the Bureau of Justice Assistance. But we have a whole team. If you have a research question, you need some help, it's just a place where you can ask and get help immediately. The people that run that service know kind of all the network and the different places where they can help you build a relationship or make a connection. And I think, again, that's one of my favorite things that we've been able to do, is really kind of create an open door where we can connect people to different resources. So the JTech resources are sort of ever expanding. And I think as we move into the second phase of JCOIN, we're going to continue to refine our approaches to making things accessible. And we're always open to suggestions. So if you're looking for something that you can't find, let us know what it is, and that'll give us the inspiration for how to keep getting better and keep thinking about how we create these resources that are really give people the help that they need when they're looking for it.
Thank you. That's great. My next question, you led right into it. It's about JCOIN Phase 2, or what we on the CTC team like to talk about as JCOIN 2.0. Right now, there's a call out for applications for centers, for grants, call for proposals. What are your hopes and dreams for what JCOIN in its next phase can continue to do or can become?
I think that with JCOIN, one of the things that we do when we're funding research at the NIH, we're always trying to look on the horizon so that the research that comes out, it's a very long process. Research is a very long process. So a study that's funded today, it's going to be 6 years before we have the results from that and before we know what those lessons learned are going to be. So we have to be looking forward today into the future and try to predict what kinds of information people are going to be needing. When we started JCOIN 6 years ago now, 5 years ago, a lot of these new medications were newly available. People were just starting to think about really accelerating the use of medications for opioid use disorder in jails and prisons. There's been so much movement in the field over the last several years. And I hope that with our next iteration of JCOIN, we're going to be able to be responsive to that and keep track of how the world is evolving, how practice is evolving, and continue to offer solutions. So lots of changes in methadone regulation, for example. Can we fund research that's going to help understand the best ways to do that or what the best practices are related to scaling up of methadone in jails and prisons? We've seen lots of police and prosecutor and judge-driven diversion programs, but not as much research on those. So what are those models? Do they work? In JCOIN, our first version of JCOIN, we funded several different models of how we help people navigate from jails back into the communities and stay connected to their treatment and services that help them. And I hope that we'll look at whichever of those models work, that we can look at how to scale them up and get those into practice more broadly across the country. So, and then we've got another couple of studies that are looking at different medications and how well they work in this population. And again, I hope that we'll be seeing in our next iteration of JCOIN more and more work on what it takes to scale all of those findings and insights up and how to continue to iterate and move forward. And at the end of the day, one thing I've been thinking a lot about, our colleagues at SAMHSA often talk about recovery is possible. I think in the context of JCOIN, I think about the equivalent of that, about sort of the justice and criminal legal system and how it responds to addiction. And I think improvement is possible. And hopefully we can be using our research investments to accelerate that pace of improvement within the system.
I hope that too. I really, really do. As a researcher who studies prisons and jails in the U.S. and knows all too well the challenges that they face with substance use disorder and opioid use disorder, this means a lot to me personally. And I am sure that our listeners will be happy to hear that as well.
Thank you, Danielle. And thanks to everyone that's contributing their time and effort to doing this work. I mean, it's actually, I get to sit in my office and think of things. It's a lot harder to go do this work day to day, work with people as they're going back into the communities. And so it's really, to me, it's such an inspiration to be able to be a part of that from where I sit.
I can't possibly thank you enough, Dr. Tisha Wiley, for joining me on season 8 of the ASTIP podcast. You are an incredibly busy woman, and I am eternally grateful for you spending time with me today and for telling our listeners all the wonderful things that JCOIN is. All the very best for you, and hopefully JCOIN will continue to grow and develop and help so many people who so desperately need it. Thank you, Tisha. Thank you for listening to the ASTIP podcast. We love hearing from you. So if you have comments, topics to suggest, or some science you'd like us to cover in a future season, please write me, Danielle Rudes, at Sam Houston State University. My email is drudes@shsu.edu. And of course, thank you to the Justice Community Opioid Innovation Network, JCOIN, their Coordination and Translation Center funded by the National Institute on Drug Abuse, housed at George Mason University, where this podcast originated. Thank you to our fabulous scriptwriters on this season, Sam Houston State University doctoral students Alexa Mata and Bryce Kushmerik-McCune. And a huge and heartfelt thank you to Jason Luchin and the team at Slonky LLC for their amazing production. Tune in again soon for another episode of Aced It.